Good afternoon. Thank you for being with us here today. We are the 8th grade integrated English Language Arts and Social Studies team. Representing the Guardians of the Strengths, we have Mr. Allender, Mr. Metz, and Ms. J. From the Wolfpack, we have Ms. Brand, and myself, I'm Mrs. Owens. Over the last 5 weeks, all of the 8th grade students have been working as reconcilers while studying the cultural divides that led to the American Civil War so that they could host this forum with all of you in an effort to close the divides within their own communities. The job of a reconciler is to step into a situation, often uncomfortable, and work to bring peace, justice, and unity through honest dialogue, patience, and forgiveness. This is not an easy task, but the 8th graders before you have taken it on courageously. They have studied the conditions that foster a civil war, which are as follows: entrenched national polarization, abandonment of responsibility by political leadership, legitimization of violence, divisive press coverage, and weakened institutions. During this forum, they will address each of these topics individually, as well as looking at the effects they have on a society when they intersect. Moving through this community forum will require honesty, patience, and forgiveness from everyone in this room. Due to the cultural divides that exist within the communities in which we reside, there are already broken trusts among us. There are existing prejudices that say that this work is just schoolwork and that it doesn't really matter to the world outside of this building. To those attitudes, we ask that you suspend your disbelief and really try to see that this work that has been done to get us to this point is real, important, and will bring about a change. After all, the first step to changing your world is changing your mind about your world. With that, we are simply elated to turn this event over to the students who have worked so hard to pull it off. So please welcome Sean Pearson.
Hello. Good afternoon. My name is Sean. I am a member of the Guardian of the Strengths. During this project, I studied national polarization. I am proud to be representing this topic in this discussion. Please help me welcome one of our community guests, Mr. Anthony Smith, Superintendent of Winton City Schools.
Good afternoon. My name is Aubrey. I'm a member of the Wolfpack. During this project, I have studied abandonment of responsibility by political leaders, and I am honored to participate in this discussion with you all today. Please help me welcome one of our community guests, Assistant Chief Jermaine Hill, and also welcome Mr. Pennycuff, retired Board of Education member.
Thank you for your time. My name is Deja Thompson. I am a member of the Guardians of the Strengths. During this project, I studied legitimization of violence, and I am splendid to have a discussion with you all today. Please help me welcome one of our community guests, Chief Neil Fertelman, to the Winton Woods Middle School.
Hello, everybody. My name is Brian. I am a member of the Guardians of the Strengths. During this project, I studied divisive press coverage, and I am excited to discuss this with you all today. Please help me welcome one of our community guests, Dr. Anthony James from Miami University, to the stage. Now, please welcome Josh Ridgway from Crossroads.
Hello, my name is Samioli. I'm a member of the Wolfpack. During this project, I studied about weakened institutions, and I'm proud to have a discussion with you all today. Please help me welcome one of our community guests, Mayor Dave Moore of Green Hills, to the platform. We are now ready to officially begin the forum. We will start with Sean as he covers the topic of entrenched national polarization.
Once again, I would like to say that my name is Sean, and I study entrenched national polarization in the United States today, and whether or not this could cause another civil war. There has been a great divide in how politicians think and what they agree on. This divide in ideology has caused people to greatly dislike anyone in a political party opposite of their own. This divide in ideology also may not be fixable since it's so entrenched. According to the Pew Research Center infographic, Republicans shift to the right and Democrats shift to the left, which shows how the ideology and opinions of politicians have grown apart over a period of 20 years. This infographic impacts the way the viewer thinks about the politics and how they view people who support a different political party. National polarization is not a new issue in this country. It existed during the Civil War, but the causes of polarization were different. At the time, the divide was between the Union and the Confederacy. They both had a different idea about how the country was supposed to be run. An example of this is whether or not slavery should be legal and should be practiced in the United States. This still matters today because if this wasn't resolved, the South most likely would have never joined the North.
Hi, my name is Autumn. Thank you for being here on this wonderful day. My question is, how do we reverse the current culture of polarization? What I mean by is like, how do we divide the culture between the North and South?
Okay. Hello. How's everybody doing? All right. How do we reverse the current culture of polarization? In my mind, of course, it won't happen overnight. But we as a society, we have to learn to listen to one another and respect each other's viewpoints. Far too often, I mean, and we see it everywhere, especially the firehouse. You know, you're having a discussion with somebody, but it's like you're kind of listening, but you're really listening just to wait so you can attack whatever point they say, or you're just listening for them to finish so that you can spit your point out. It's the same thing with social media. Like, are you guys on Facebook? There's a very slim chance that you will ever have a Facebook convert. You know what I mean by that? When you give your opinion on Facebook or you try to change somebody else's opinion on Facebook, that medium is not effective. The best way to do that is to sit down, have a frank discussion, let it be face-to-face. If need be, have a moderator. But you have to use your listening ears. You can't just focus on getting your point across. And you have to listen, be tolerant, and have an open mind about things.
Hi, my name is Jaden Donald, and the question I have for you today is that what programs are currently being held within our communities to encourage the closing of divides, particularly the racial and cultural divides?
So, Joshua, glad to be out here with you guys this evening. To answer that question, as we said earlier, I work with Crossroads and oversee the high school ministry there. And I know one of the efforts that we have to kind of tackle this racial divide and cultural divides is a thing we call Undivided. And this was actually started up with middle school and high school students. So there was a divide that was recognized within the community, and middle school and high school students wanted to take part in kind of trying to tear down that divide. So Undivided, if you don't know, is a conversation amongst multiple people of multiple races and different backgrounds. And the goal of that is to really create empathy in the conversation where not everyone may just agree, but they're able to understand each other's perspective. So I would say that programs like this, doing things like you all are doing this evening, is what we can do to continue to take away and eliminate racism in America?
Hi, my name is Amari. My question is, what made the country so separated and how can we fix it?
Good afternoon. That means talk back to me. All right. I think the thing that made the country so divided, if you look at the conditions of slavery years ago, it was about money. And money changes so many things along the way. I think people are not cognizant or aware of what damage money can do. I think people should be more aware of how they can communicate more effectively with each other. For instance, everybody on this stage that's probably over 30, at some point in time, everybody here have been a bully or been bullied. And how many of you have experienced any kind of bullying in your life? On either side. Years ago, when it happened with people on this stage, the bullying stopped when you went inside your house. Now, it doesn't stop because of the media attention and all of your devices that you use. How many of you have ever joined a chat with another person negatively about someone else? Because it's easy. You can get 1,000 hits within a matter of seconds. So I think people need to figure out how to have more open communication with each other, and not just by social media. And I guess I have one more question for the audience. How many of you spend more time on your phone than you do talking to another person face to face? It starts right there. So if you would have more and better communication face to face, I think you get to know people a little bit better, and I think it would be a more exciting society for everyone to live in. Thank you.
My name is Aubrey, and I study the abandonment of responsibility by political leaders. This is when political leaders fail to do their job as voice of the people and only show interest towards things that benefit them. This can look like current presidents blaming past presidents for our country's problems or giving money to special interest groups. Since the beginning of America, we have seen political leaders abandon their responsibility to citizens. According to Gallup Daily Tracking, only 12 of our 50 states have a 50% or higher approval rating of President Trump. This shows that Trump is abandoning his responsibility as a political leader and his duty to be voice of the people. During the Civil War times, the same thing happened. The United States was divided because of slavery, and political leaders were only pleasing those with the same ideals as them. If you were president and were pro-slavery, the country did nothing to help the slaves, and then treated them like garbage even after they were freed. These are all ways that our politicians, our government, has let us down and turned a blind eye to the pain and suffering of the people, and for the sole reason of profit. I implore you to ask yourself this: were these the right decisions? Were these the responsible decisions? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jonathan, and the question I'm asking you today is, given the history of Cincinnati, do you think that police officers of our communities are maintaining their responsibilities, specifically regarding relationships with people of color?
Thanks for your question. I think that a lot has changed in both our communities and in law enforcement in the past 20 to 30 years. One of the things that police officers now do is, instead of just training to shoot their guns accurately or to learn defensive tactics, we also train now in de-escalation. And basically what that means is learning how to talk and learning how to talk better. We probably face more people with very diverse needs, sometimes people with disabilities that may have mental health issues, than even a psychologist or a psychiatrist. We are the first responders, and with our brothers in the fire service, respond on these calls each and every day to people who sometimes are under the influence of heroin or whatever the case might be. We have to learn how to resolve that situation and to get that person the help that he or she needs without it escalating to a degree of violence. So I think that some of the training and some of the cultural shifts that we've seen have helped us to respond more positively to situations in the community. Our goal is that everybody gets to go home, everybody gets to get some help or get the help that they need. Unfortunately, a lot of times the problem has to do with some type of an addiction, and that costs money, and it takes some time to get that person to the right spot. So I think that probably the best answer is not only just for us, but for the entire population in general, is to be better listeners and to try and put ourselves in the other person's shoes and try and respond with some empathy to the problems that we're faced with.
Hi, my name is Ariana, and my question for you today is, Twitter has been the source of a lot of controversy. Is it responsible to be handling foreign situations via social media platform?
All right, this goes again to, let's see, just so that everybody heard the question. Twitter has been the source of a lot of controversy. It is responsible to be handling, is it responsible to handle foreign situations with the social media platform? By and large, I would say no. Again, we talk about communication. What's more impersonal, Twitter or talking to someone face to face? Which one is more impersonal? Twitter. Twitter by and large, just like, have you ever text somebody and they took it the wrong way, but once you called them, it cleared up? Same thing with Twitter. You have a finite amount of characters to try to get a point across. So there's so many things that can be lost in translation. Me personally, I don't think it's a very effective platform. If you want to send kudos or shoot out a quick message and you plan on expanding upon that message through some other media, face-to-face, video, conference, etc., I don't see the use for using Twitter. I mean, you're weighing current versus effective. Is it current? Yes. Is it what young students are doing? Yes. But is it really effective? Is that how we want to handle business of such magnitude? My vote is no.
My name is KJ Oliver, and my question is, important history is constantly being erased and taken out of history's textbook. How can you encourage teachers in our communities to teach us about hard history? What can be or what is being done to prepare teachers to teach the hard history themselves?
So I'll respond to this. I think it's a very important question, and I'm pretty sure it's probably a little bit over your heads to try to understand the textbook industry. But let me say it's very complex. But so is the job of your teachers. And if you don't believe me, you're with them every day. Just ask them all of the demands that they have placed on them. Now, this in no way takes away the problem of erasing important history out of textbooks, because there are many histories that are covered, and many people have perspectives on what happened in the past. But I would challenge you as students to also take ownership of your learning, to be consumers of knowledge. I'm pretty sure there's a local library. I'm pretty sure there are ways for you to engage with online material, but that also takes you being responsible. That takes you maybe challenging your parents to place you in contexts that help you learn a little bit more than what's required in a classroom. That takes you maybe telling the person next to you, even if that's now, that, hey, I'm trying to pay attention. I really want to learn, because something is coming ahead in about 8, 9, 10 years for many of you, and it's called adulthood. And it's hard. It's not always easy. And whether you like history or not, it impacts you. And you become a citizen that gets to vote, that gets to be a part of these topics that we're talking about, and how engaged you are, and who you vote onto a board, or who you vote into Congress, and so forth. So yes, teachers have a role, the textbook industry have a role, but you as individuals, you're old enough now to be able to take a little bit of responsibility for what you want to know. Be curious, chase those curiosities. Why is it that people are acting in this way? Visit a library. So that's my short answer.
Hi, again, my name is Deja Thompson, and I research legitimization of violence. As a daily news occurrence, such as police brutality and gun violence, this relates to the topic because most criminals, some politicians, and even a bit of regular people in the USA believe we can legitimately solve our problems using violence. To elaborate on this topic, I used an infographic to absorb data and form my perception of things. The infographic, Gun Violence in America, represents the wicked ways firearms are used and how easy it is to buy them. According to this infographic, not only are there 14,869 more gun stores than grocery stores, but in 2011, 68% of murders guns were used. This infographic is meant to impact the way viewers can observe the diligence of crime in our society today. Admittingly, society does look atrocious and dissatisfactory. It resembles the American Civil War. During the Civil War, legitimization of violence weighed heavily since both Confederate and Union forces would use their power to abuse and Union forces would abuse their power to hurt others to achieve what they valued. An example of this is the story of John Brown. He decided to steal arsenal from Harper's Ferry's, West Virginia, to give to slaves to overpower their owners. This is still significant because little by little wars are sparking up. And if we do not do anything about it, then this can cause another war, whether it is civil or ubiquitous. As I pondered on my thesis, I would like to catechize a question. What drives people to believe that violence is a direction to solve an irrefutable condition?
Hi, my name is Caleb, and my question is, how can we as individuals who live in the community help decrease the amount of violence that is used today within our community?
Let me try an answer to that you won't expect to hear that answer coming. When my son was a student in this building, some churches in the area arranged for some students from Japan to come and visit and live here for about 3 weeks. When the students were so these students from Japan lived in our homes. When we were taking the students back to catch the bus to go to the airport, someone said, if you have lived together in your home, you can no longer shoot at each other. I was struck by that. As you may remember from your world history, the United States and Japan were in a significant war in World War II. We were shooting at each other, a very uncivil war. But this man said, if you live together, even for a brief period of time, if you live in each other's homes, you can no longer shoot at each other. So I encourage you to think of what you could do. And I'll use the term a sleepover. Can you have a sleepover with someone who is of a different race from you, someone who is a different religion from you? Just think of the conversation that might take place that evening or over breakfast the next morning about closing the gap on your differences. We can't solve the whole world's problems in one night, but we may be able to change the attitude of one person and one housemate for one evening. Give it a try.
it's me again. I'm back with another question. I know you started to address this before, but what measures are currently in place to make sure that our community's response isn't violence? What are the police doing? What organizations are working to make sure that the riots of 2001 never repeat themselves?
I think the answer is somewhat of what I said before. I think that we do different approaches in terms of how we interact with the community and how we train to interact within the community. And a lot of it has to do with the word civility. I think that it's important for all of us, whether it's police officers, whether it's just members of the population, whether it's any of you, to not assume things, to not be prejudiced against a race, against a gender, against an age group, against an occupation. I think that it's important for police officers to realize that people of a particular color, a particular gender, whatever, a particular religion, are not all bad, they're not all good, they're individuals. It's important for people to remember that police officers are individuals. They're not all bad, they're not all good, they're individuals, but we are held to a higher standard. We're expected to behave professionally. And as a police leader, that's what I hold my officers accountable to. I can tell you that we hire people of great integrity. There are some of those that go wrong. I have fired police officers who don't meet my expectations. But on the other hand, there are police officers who go out each and every day and do their jobs in the manner that you would want them to if you're the one that is going to encounter them. So I think there is a higher expectation of police officers today than there was years ago. And I think that we should be held accountable to do the jobs properly and to treat people the same way that we would want to be treated.
Hello, my name is Iris. Thank you for being here today. And my question is, do stronger gun laws stand a chance against gun violence?
I'll respond. So it depends on where you're looking at, the data you're using. Some of the stricter gun laws in our country are in Illinois, state I just so happen to be from, yet they have some of the higher rates of gun violence. I'm not sure if you can ever remove all guns. Can you regulate guns in a way that helps keep them out of the hands of people who want to do harm to others? Yeah, probably. But being able to track that empirically or through research has been very difficult. And at least in America, in other countries, they found different things, but at least in America, it hasn't always correlated that you make strict gun laws and all of a sudden people stop using that particular tool to harm others. So hard question, hard truth.
My name is Ariana. Mr. Smith and Mr. Pincup, this question is mainly for you. Because of the culture of school shootings in the United States, has when was considered arming teachers, has there been any discussion around how to protect us from tragedies like we saw in Parkland shooting?
Okay, so my teachers, raise your hand. Okay. I really want the teachers to focus on teaching. And I think people have talked about arming teachers and some of these other things, but being in a project-based learning school, teachers move around a lot. And when people are moving around a lot, they're not concentrating on having a weapon on their side, thinking about protection. They're thinking about how to impart some valuable knowledge in your brain so that you can be 21st century learners. So I know people are talking about arming people and protecting systems, but I think that society has to figure out what needs to be protected and how we do it. And I think people need to be very focused on what are the responsibilities of certain people. So teachers having weapons, some people may think it's a good idea. I don't, because I want my teachers to concentrate on teaching you and not worry about protection. I have the chief down there to take care of that part. That's what he does. That's what his team of people do, and I think they do it very, very well. So having teachers with weapons, again, people think that it may solve the issue. I think it may add more problems. Thank you.
Hello again. My name is Brian. I'm going to address divisive press coverage. How can our country live in harmony when every day a new topic is presented that divides our country? Divisive press coverage impacts our society today because topics are presented based on people's opinions of the matter rather than actual facts. For example, the Stoneman Douglas school shooting divided our nation because while survivors of the shooting protested on gun laws, the other side did nothing. The press even sets the tone of coverage on U.S. presidents. According to the Washington Post, some of our most recent presidents weren't the best, with the exception of President Obama. After studying this, I've come to the conclusion that there are two sides to every topic that divides our nation, and it was the same way during the time of the American Civil War. At that time, divisive press coverage was dividing our nation because the North didn't like slavery and the South wanted to keep it. This still matters today because everyone will never have the same opinion on a single topic. Because of this, divisive press coverage will continue to affect us today and for days to come. There will always be two sides to a topic, and we can't change that. So how can our nation live in harmony if every day a new topic is presented in a biased way? Could divisive press coverage lead to new wars because of what people think?
Hi, my name is Brianna. In a society that is not media literally, whose job is it to hold the press responsible or encourage media literacy?
I think it's the people, newspapers, online coverage. These different outlets exist because people are supporting what they write. And so I think it's people should try to find balance in what they read, make sure they are at least getting the two sides to whatever story they're looking at. That's kind of difficult with so many people reading their news online and the way algorithms work to push you into certain directions based on things that you like or different outlets that you go to. But you can still be a consumer that tries to figure out all sides of a story. There's actually recently a study that came out that showed where different news organizations around the world stand, and many of them that were in the center that didn't try to sway the readers either way were outside of the U.S. One I remember was the BBC. I will forward that to your teacher so they can show it to you. It's a pretty cool graphic that allows you to see that we are all biased by some of the things we read, but we can try to find some balance in reading multiple sides of a particular issue.
My name is William, and my question for you is, why is the press getting more divisive? How can how can this, quote, spike in divisiveness, end quote, be stemmed?
That's a great question, William. So to start with answering that, how many of us have, raise your hand if you heard of the term clickbait? Clickbait. So yeah, most of us. So how many of us have fallen victim to like clickbait, where we click on a news article or a video thinking it's going to be one thing and it's something completely different? Yeah. So my belief is that that's why the media has become more divisive, because I can put a certain heading for my article or for a video, and I know I'm going to get X amount of likes, I'm going to get X amount of people to view it. And so based off of that, I can sell more ads, because I can tell this certain company that, hey, I get X amount of likes and views every time I put out an article. And so we as people have to help navigate that and not be so quick to click on the first catchy title that we see. And I think that by doing that and doing the research and the due diligence of checking to see, okay, which news cycle is more likely to pull out an article or something just to get me to view it, and making sure we're attentive to not just falling for that going forward.
My name is Layla Turner, and my question is, if our main source of world events is the news, how are we supposed to determine which stories are true or not, as well as which stations we can trust to remain unbiased?
News. How many of you watch it? How many of you believe everything that you see on the news? Everything. Okay, so news is sensationalized. You have media outlets that are trying to get more viewers, more entrants, more advertisement dollars. So I've seen the news before where one station reports something and the next station is totally different. So let's go to something simple. How many of you know what the weather is going to be tomorrow? The news tells you what it's going to be, but how many times have you heard that it's going to be a certain temperature and it's totally different? Okay, so sometimes it's not even the weather that gets reported right. Did you know tomorrow is supposed to be a snow day? I wouldn't care, because tomorrow is what? That would be a good day for me. Then I wouldn't have to call it off. How many of you have sat home in the morning hours hoping that the superintendent says snow day, no school? And I see teachers in the back holding their hand up too. But I think one of the things you have to look at very, very carefully, you have all of these devices and all this technology, so don't believe what you see the first time. Read, research. Remember, you're in a great place. Winton Woods Middle School, where you have project-based learning, you can look and find more information than the media could ever give you. So remember, parts of news is already sensationalized to make you stay tuned to that particular station. Last question. How many times have you heard the local media reporter say, great news, big news story at 11, or kidnapping at 12 or something like that? They're trying to get you interested to stay tuned to the story. So kind of watch and be very, very careful of it. You may see that there's some other parts to news that's really not as newsworthy.
Once again, hello, I'm Sami, and during this project I have been studying about weakened institutions that are struggling or dysfunctional. In society today, an example is that people cannot get jobs or positions because they're not educated. Education has weakened, and I think it should never weaken. According to the University of Phoenix, educating the workforce of the future, education plays a great role in everyone's life. And without education, you can't get a good job and you can't function in society. Weakened institutions were different during the Civil War. As people had different perspectives about education, they valued education but only for certain races. White had the opportunity to get an education, but there were laws that denied it to African Americans. If slaves were educated, they could potentially end slavery, which scared people in the South to the South. Today, the majority of schools that receive less funding are schools of minority students. We all want to see our kids achieving success, which is only possible through proper education. How can we make sure there is equality in education?
Hello, my name is Martez Redmond. My topic is weakened institutions. What was weak about the government during the Civil War? Are these things still weak today? And what can we do to strengthen our institutions?
Take a crack at that one. So I'll say one thing, and I used to be a history teacher, so props to all the social studies teachers out there. I know the struggle. So one thing that in studying the Civil War that I would say is kind of correlated to today in the government that we have today is that there is no consistent vision or mission from party to party. During the Civil War, it was North versus the South. Money was a big factor in that. So the South was interested in protecting slavery so that they could continue to sell cotton. Cotton was the main cash crop for most states during the Civil War in the South. Similar today, from state to state, you're interested, our government officials, I would say, are sometimes more interested in protecting their jobs. So they will say anything or do anything to make sure that they're up for re-election the following year. And so when you are more worried about your position than you are the people, then that creates divisiveness amongst other states and amongst even different parties. And I would say one thing that we could do to strengthen these institutions is to hold our government officials accountable for that. Anyone can write a letter to their senator. You guys have the right to do that at this age. You may not have the right to vote, but you have a right to have a voice, and you have the ability to influence our government officials, whether it's writing a letter, phone call, or shooting an email. So I think that's one thing that we can all do to help influence our current institutions and make them less divisive.
Hi, my name is Grace Nolte, and my question is, why are there more people in prison in the United States than in any other country in the world?
Well, I have an opinion on that. To some extent, I think we have quite a few people in prisons today that, when I grew up, were in mental institutions. After I graduated from college, I interviewed for a job with the state of Ohio to work in their mental health system. And if I remember correctly, they had 5 facilities in Ohio with 80,000 some mental patients in those facilities. And today I don't know what that number is, but it definitely isn't high like that, and there's very few mental facilities in town, in the state, because they now treat people with drugs. And so if some of those people who have mental issues end up getting off medication or other things, they interact with the police, they commit crimes. And I think I don't know what the statistics are, but I think there's a high percentage of people that end up getting imprisoned because they have mental health issues and not, a real criminal of sorts.
Hi, my name is Winter Edwards, and my question is, how do you justify the government's lack of supervision and protection when allowing underage children to obtain guns?
I would like to say that there is no justifiable reason why the government let underage children have guns or have access to guns. Because since I could read in the newspaper when my grandma would read to me, I would hear about you know, a 2-year-old shot his younger sister, or a 5-year-old got shot by his older brother because they were allowed to like have just access to guns, or like the parents didn't have them locked up, or there's not enough stigma around guns. Like, guns are dangerous. They shouldn't just be lying on the kitchen table or in a safe but not locked, because, or just, as a 13-year-old, I could go out to a private buyer and buy a gun. That's something that I can legally do. And there's no justifiable reason why that should happen, because when you're at 13, 12, or younger, your brain's not developed enough to really process a gun or what you can do with a gun. And when you're not that developed in the brain, you shouldn't be allowed to get a gun, because it's just a thing. It could be seen as a toy. It's sold as a toy. So why should it be so accessible to children? It makes no sense, and there's really no justifiable reason for that.
Hello, my name is Stacy, and my question is, why did the government funds for college decrease?
Oh, I'll jump in, and Doc, you can correct me if I'm wrong. And this is just a theory on me. I think there's a couple of reasons why. One, the government wants to put more responsibility on the individual as a way to push them to do better academically and to seek out those grants yourself, but also due to institutional classism. The people that are mostly affected by the government funds being cut are the minorities and those in lower income housing. The ones that have the money, they don't have to rely on grants. Typically, they go to public schools with more resources, or they go to private schools with more resources, so they're less affected by the government cutting those funds. You, as an individual, you guys have to recognize this, and I know your teachers tell you this stuff, and I know your parents tell you this stuff. It's a war going on. Knowledge is one of the things that you can control. You have to have a thirst for knowledge. All of these questions are surrounding communication and knowledge. When you hear things and you're not sure which way to go, you have to fact check them. Don't just read American newspapers. Read newspapers from Africa, from Britain, Brazil, etc. Expand your knowledge base. Ultimately, you are responsible for your education. You can make this happen. You have the power to make this happen. We can't always rely on the government to do things for us, and that's just the way that the things are. I'm not saying that it's right or wrong, that's just how it is. So get that knowledge, be the best that you can be, and always explore and have that thirst for knowledge.
Before you ask your question, I'll respond to that as well. Again, back to your, I think I said 8 or 9 years, not even quite that long. It's like 4 or maybe 5 years for many of you, where you get to be at an age where you can vote. And that means you have a responsibility as a citizen. And so the government isn't this sort of boogeyman person that's out in the world. The government is made of people just like you. And so you have a responsibility to hear what candidates are running on, their platform statements. And so there's been a movement since about the 70s that funding for higher education has been cut each year. And that's because of the people who are in the government, and they have to put together a budget, and they have to figure out where do we want to allocate funds through things called taxes. And so it's not this super complicated thing. Mostly it's being a citizen and being aware. So I would challenge you all to ask your parents, did you vote for someone who funds college? That's going to be very important to you in about 4 years, especially if you're on a need-based grant. And if your parents aren't paying attention to that, then they pay for it as well as you through loans. And so there's always consequences for our actions. If you don't vote for someone, then you have little say about how college and other things that are run by the government are funded. If you do vote, but you don't pay attention to how people are being stewards of your vote, then again, it's on people. So we have to be knowledgeable about what are people running on, how are they allocating the funds that they're taking out of my paycheck, and then you vote accordingly. It seems simple, but again, when adulthood hits, you'll see how complicated it gets.
Hi, my name is Rain, and my question is, what do you think are some ways that could improve prison rates and the rate of people returning to jail?
Well, I've got a thought. I bet you every one of you has someone that you know or someone in your family that has been impaired because they get drunk or they get high. And if you think about that person, usually if they go out and they interact with other people, they do very stupid things. And they usually get in trouble and they get arrested. The thing that drives crime mostly in the United States today is drugs and drugs of addiction. Unfortunately, we have people that start out and they'll experiment with pot maybe, and then they maybe want to move on to different things. And what happens is they end up, at least in our country today, in 2018, and they end up with heroin. And we see it right here in Green Hills. We see it throughout greater Cincinnati. We see it throughout the state of Ohio and throughout our nation. We see people overdosing on heroin every day. We see people that want to make a profit by selling that, and so they become drug dealers. And eventually they get caught and they go to prison. But drugs is probably what we spend most of our time with as law enforcement officers. And my message to all of you and to your friends and to your families is stay away from it. Life's pretty good as it is without being impaired. And the more people that we have involved with drugs, well, first of all, the more people that die. And secondly, the more people that get in trouble. And that drives our prison rates sky high. So I really hope from all my heart that you stay away from that. And life's pretty good, like I said, without them.
So as we close our forum, we would like to thank you for your participation and your dedication to this work. We remind you that the job of a reconciler is to step into a situation, often uncomfortable, and work to bring peace, justice, and unity through honest dialogue, patience, and forgiveness. This is not an easy task. We hope you move through this community and this life with honesty, patience, and forgiveness. We know that cultural divides exist, and we also know that they can be closed. We see the effects of existing prejudices that say that this work is just schoolwork and that it doesn't really matter to the world outside of this building. We urge you to permanently suspend your disbelief. See that this work is real, important, and unfinished. After all, the first step to changing the world is changing the way that you see it. Would you please stand and give your panelists a round of applause? And before we go, we would like to ask if any of the panelists have any final words or anything that they would like to say to conclude before we ask. If any panelists would like to say anything before we hear the announcements and dismiss.
Yeah, I'd like to do a final. I had the pleasure of attending a program today for seniors that are going on to college, and all of those seniors had received full scholarships to various universities. And having some brief conversations with them after the ceremony, Their real challenge began and their real ideas began when they were in middle school. They wanted to be something better, something different than what they are. So you can't wait until you get to high school. You guys are going to high school next year. And I'm going to tell you, one of the biggest fallacies about high school is people struggle in the 9th grade. You're all going to be 9th graders. You don't have to struggle in the 9th grade. You can take that challenge on, go into high school and be serious, and then I can bet you'll be getting scholarships to various universities across the country. So your next chapter, be very, very serious and very, very intentional about it, because colleges and universities are waiting for you, but they want you to become prepared. So think about that. Thank you.
One thing that I wanted to add, we're talking about weakened systems and things like that, and I mentioned warfare before. There's 3 things that I know that there is war for. There's an actual battle going on. People are trying to take your time, your money, and your spirit. Okay, the spiritual warfare, we can talk about that later. But your time and your money, your opinions, just be careful with what you allow into your system. Some of the things that you watch on TV, some of the things that you listen to on the radio, it really does have an effect on just your mindset in general when you're coming to work and how you present yourself and how you conduct yourself. Anybody listen to the Ricky Smiley Show in the mornings? Okay, maybe you guys do. You start school pretty early here. But when I'm coming to work, I listen to Ricky Smiley a little bit, or when I'm riding around in my car. And right before they go off, they have, like, they call a praise and worship song. The song before, they were playing trap music. And I'm just not just like regular trap. You know what trap music is. You know what the content is about. And I did this, and we did this, and da-da-da-da-da-da. And then Ricky's like, oh, I need to hear that again. And they said, well, are we going to do the praise song? Ready for the praise song? He's like, oh, yeah, I guess we need to do that too. And it was perplexing for me when I listen to things like that. And some of the things that we listen to as a culture. I'm African American, love rap music, love R&B. This is what I grew up on. This is what I do. I used to dance. Some of the things that I listened to back then that I think about now, they were destructive. I still listen to the radio now. Some of the things and the messages that they listen to, I don't allow my kids to listen to because they're destructive. So you have to be careful what you put into your system because there is a warfare. Things are trying to take your soul, your spirit, and your time. Okay, so be selective. All right, be selective and make smart choices.
So panelists, thank you for coming this afternoon. I appreciate all of your help and all of your insight. If you all want to just head off that way, we're going to dismiss our students after our afternoon announcements. Students, if you could help them find their way over there to the band room.